It's about love, not cash. Stealing money from the poor's a bit rash. Line your pockets, fill your tanks with your rockets. Look at it, we just can't stop it. Loving your neighbour with bombs is wrong. Loving your neighbour with bombs is wrong. Just don't be a cunt, mate. That's the only rule. Loving your neighbour with bombs is wrong. Loving your neighbour with bombs is wrong. All been going on way too long.
So I'm here with Kerrie and Alice, who started the website awholenewhigh.com, and we're going to talk about why they started this website. Part of the website is educating people about drugs, so we're going to talk about why they're doing that, and also some of the other work they're doing with psychedelic drugs. Seems like with other people, something I talk about a lot on this podcast. And if you're watching this, you'll probably notice I have a new setup going, which I'm getting used to. Lots of things in the way, and yeah, I'm setting up a studio here, so you'll notice I am actually in person. These guys are on Skype, and we're sitting next to each other. It's kind of cool. So anyway, thanks for joining me, you guys. You're joining me from Portugal, so I appreciate making the connection.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Yes. Hi. Hi.
Yeah. Okay, so this website you started, my assumption is you started working with some of these psychedelics on your own, probably a long time ago, for your own personal exploration, benefit, and then it seems like you were inspired to help other people learn about these things. And I know that you do work with people in sort of one-on-one or different type of settings, but so what was it that actually motivated you to start the website initially?
Well, we were working with people without psychedelics before we started the website and before we started to explore psychedelics ourselves. Well, I was. And working with people with integration work, with trauma, with just general awareness. And then through our own experimentation with psychedelics, really started to see them as such a complementary tool to the work that we were doing.
So you were already sort of counseling people to some extent without any of this stuff.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, it's a little bit different because for me, I started my spiritual path through a mushroom experience. And
sorry.
What happened to the camera?
Yes, this is all new. I figured there'd be some things like that. Sorry, you said a mushroom experience, right?
Yeah, for me it was a little bit different because I started using psychedelics a little bit earlier than Kerrie did. It was actually a magic mushroom experience that brought me onto the path of I don't want to say healing, but like awareness.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like very helpful to have this psychedelic experience at the beginning. But then I saw that I could not fully integrate it into my life, and I started learning tools of integration. And I used these tools of integration to work with people too, not with psychedelics first. But then Kerrie and I met each other. And we both had the same passion of this, of like self-discovery, self-awareness, working with people, and that's why, and entheogens, like psychedelics, of course. That's why we started the website.
Yeah, well, that's similar to how I started as well. Was psilocybin mushrooms as a young person kind of got me on the path, just going in that direction and trying to help people. Same thing with not necessarily with psychedelics, but just realizing that we could help people live differently and look at things differently.
Yeah, and really for me, I experimented or played with or had fun with psychedelics and other drugs a lot in my early 20s. Yeah. And I'd put that side of my life away, and I just didn't see them as something that fit into my life once I got past about 25. I kind of outgrew the experience, but I always had like such fond memories of that time, and part of me really missed it, but I wasn't doing it in a healthy way. I didn't have an issue with it, but I was certainly not doing it for it was more of a social thing, and I had great experiences with it.
Right.
And then I was becoming more in touch with myself, and I was working with other people. And through Alice introduced me to using them as a tool. And the experiences I had then, merging like what I'd learned without them and then combining what I'd learned without them with them, really blew my mind. And just how they complemented each other, the tools that we work with while in the psychedelic experience.
Right. So what are some of those tools that you're referring to that you would use without mushrooms?
So parts work is one of the tools, which is a process which allows you to basically, we've all got multiple aspects within ourselves that are all driving us. So I might have an aspect of me that really wants one thing, a relationship, for example, and I really want it, and I can't understand why it's not in my life, and I just dream about having this partner. But then I might have another aspect who's completely terrified of relationships or of men or of commitment.
For sure, right. Conflicting things sometimes.
Exactly. So I've got an inner conflict going on within me, and both of these aspects are a point of attraction, and they're both manifesting my reality. And until these aspects line up with each other, we can't bring into our world what we want to experience, because they're basically steering our life. They're playing tug of war with each other.
Right.
So we can't line up with what we really want to have. And it's not that one aspect is against us. One aspect is actually trying to protect us. The part of us that doesn't want the relationship has a legitimate fear for not wanting that because of a past experience. So it's trying to protect us. It loves us. It's not self-sabotage as we often think it is. And lining those aspects up, like going inwards and like talking to these aspects as separate identities and like bringing them to a heart space and allowing them to talk to each other, allows them to resolve the inner conflict that's going on within us, so we can move forward and actually get what we want. And now that can be done without psychedelics. That's part of the work that we were doing without them. But with the aid of psychedelics, it just makes the process so much easier.
Right. Yeah.
So much easier.
The ability to sort of like go into these sort of maybe somewhat subconscious areas, that seems like something that psychedelics are very good at. They help people get down to what's driving them underneath the behavior.
Well, they release resistance, and that's the biggest issue when we're dealing with parts, is that the part that's trying to protect us is like, I am not like letting you go after this relationship. No matter what, I have to keep you safe. And that's the resistance that's holding us back. But with psychedelics, we're allowed to see all these aspects from our highest perspective. And from our highest perspective, we can see that actually that part is no longer serving us. And it did at one point in our lives, but now it's hurting us. And it's easy to access that part because our higher self wants us to see that so we can get where we want to go.
Right.
And yeah, so psychedelics remove the existence in most cases, or make it easier to access those points.
Yeah, because often these parts are also so in our subconscious mind that we don't even know about them.
Right.
So like if we talk about the example of the relationship, like we think we really, really want this relationship, but there is an aspect in us that doesn't want it, and we don't even know. Like we don't even know about that aspect. We don't know. We're not in touch with it. We just don't understand why we can't get this relationship. And so with the psychedelics, if we go into psychedelic experience with an intention to find something out, that's when we meet these aspects of ourselves and can find a resolve between the different aspects.
Right. Yeah, and what you're describing, it sounds some people would describe it as like the traumas or things that we can get in touch with these things that are no longer serving us, as you put it, Kerrie. That at one point they did. At one point there was like a purpose that they had to help us get through something that was maybe too chaotic or stressful for us to rationalize or something at the time. But then you get to a certain point when you're an adult and you have to leave those things behind because they're no longer serving you in a good way, kind of thing.
Yeah, they're actually not even needed in your life anymore. And what causes our pain is that there's an inner child within us who actually believes that we have to hold on to this part. And it caused us huge pain to create that part in the first place, because in order to create a part, a piece of us had to fragment. It had to separate and disidentify with our truth and who we are and what we wanted and what we needed, because those needs weren't available to us. So that caused a huge amount of pain. So not only when we meet these parts do we get to integrate them and let that aspect rejoin us and come together with us again. But we actually get to the pain that was beneath it also.
I see. And do you know what you were describing, you called it like a parts therapy or something like that? Is there another name for it? Family something? Have you heard of this?
That's family constellation work.
Maybe there's someone who's actually just recently talking to me about this this type of therapy, and it sounds very similar to what you're talking about, breaking down our sort of psyche into different individual parts. I just can't remember the name right now.
Yeah, there's a guy, he's written a book about it, and it's called Family, and he gives each part like a role. Like one of them is the protector, one of them, there's so many different ways to do it, but that's one of them. Yeah.
So you had this training anyway. You guys found yourself on this path, sort of psychedelics aside, looking to help people in different ways, and then by integrating the psychedelics into this thing, you found it helped. It helped a lot. It was like not just a small thing you could do, that it was so profound you decided to start a website and really seems like make it sort of the center of your work now.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, personally for me, the experiences that I had propelled me so far and got me so unstuck that I was compelled to, it was like everyone needs to know about this. And at the moment, everyone knows about drugs. Everyone knows about their risks, but they're not told the full story.
Right.
And nobody talks about their benefits. And when I had the experiences that I had, I'd been on a spiritual path or a path of conscious awareness, and had gotten to great lengths with that by myself. But then this was just like, wow, it can be so much easier.
Right.
And it can be so much more insightful, and it can be it's the resistance that makes things so hard for us, and we're in that resistance all the time, and that's where our pain is. We're so afraid of reaching our pain because the resistance feels so bad when we're trying to get to something, but actually like the pain itself isn't that bad, and just having something that removes that resistance just changed things dramatically for me, and it wasn't something I was prepared to keep to myself.
Right. Yeah. It's very similar. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me was that me in my teenager years, for example, until I was in my mid-20s, I was completely against drugs. And anybody was like talking about like any kind of drug, also psychedelics, magic mushrooms, like I was very judgmental. I didn't even touch a joint until I was 22.
Right.
But then when I was around 25, I had like always periods of depression in my life. They would come back, and I didn't have any answer to them. And I also had I had very messy relationships, many questions. And then one of my best friends just came out of nowhere and said, I did ayahuasca and now I'm doing magic mushrooms. And he was telling me about how he was using them to find out more about himself and how to answer his questions. And first I was telling him like, oh my God, these are drugs, don't touch them, they can be very dangerous. I was very well programmed in that.
Yeah.
And then he told me so much about it that I said, okay, I need to try this. If I'm so judgmental, I need to try it so I can actually have my own opinion. And then it changed my life.
Right.
And I never wanted to stop again. Like, not that I'm taking it all the time, but I've had many experiences since then. They have shifted my life so much. Like I no longer call myself depressed, or like I have no depression. And so I really want to tell everybody else in the world who was thinking the same way as I was thinking 10 years ago, that they are wrong.
Yeah.
That they should try it out before they can be that judgmental.
Yeah, it's important to share that. I think that you weren't you didn't grow up as someone who was chasing the dragon or chasing highs or drugs. And it was the same for me. Both of your stories are very similar to my own. Is like I've never been someone who does a lot of drugs. Even now, I still like people when maybe they check out my podcast or things. They sort of assume I'm doing psychedelic drugs every weekend or something, you know. And it's definitely not the case. I very rarely use them now. And growing up too, I got into drinking alcohol early and smoking pot fairly early. But other than that, it wasn't much. Mushrooms a little bit. But it's just people have this assumption that people are doing this to get high and to escape and whatnot, and that's generally not the case. And it's good to hear from from people who grew up on the other side of the thing, where they're not into the drug thing at all, but then find this later and find them so useful. You kind of have to shout from the rooftops. You have to just create a website. Like, that's what I did. I started a podcast because I had to talk about this stuff somehow. Like, I had to get it out there. It was crazy that people who really don't have experience with this stuff are saying it's so dangerous and so harmful, no benefits, yada yada. It's people are just misinformed about this stuff. So it seems like obviously that's something that inspired you to start the website. A lot of what's on there is sort of drug education stuff. I really like the parts where you're writing about the drugs from the perspective of the drugs. I think that's a cool way to do it. I like it. It's fun to read as well. It's kind of like, it's something starting like, hi, I'm psilocybin mushrooms, and this is what I'll do, and da da da. It's cool. It's a good idea, and you got a lot of good information on there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another reason that we wanted to start the website too is for those who actually feel like they want to try these substances, these psychedelics, that they are also informed that if like one psychedelic experience is not going to change their life forever, that there's a lot of work to do afterwards, that they give you access to a lot of information, a lot of emotions and awareness that you usually don't have. But then after that, you really need to integrate that into your life if you want to change your life. And there are also a lot of people out there who think like, I just go to Peru and I take ayahuasca for a week and then
all my problems
will be solved. And so that is also part of the education that we want to do on the website.
Yeah, to really prepare people for that, because obviously then it's a huge disappointment, and also can actually put someone backwards if they go and they do take this trip to Peru expecting themselves to have all the answers or to have everything healed within themselves, and then they leave and they go home to their old environment and not only have things not changed, but then they've learned all this information, or they've been given access to all this information, and they don't know how to go forward with it, or they don't have a support system around them to help. And that was another key reason we wanted to create the website, to help people understand that. And
I got that impression on the website because you had a few different either blog posts or just little excerpts here and there about like, this isn't the answer. It's not going to it's not the magic pill. It's not the magic bullet that fixes everything for you. So that it seems like, that is a message I got from your website as well.
Yeah. And also it's, it helps to, I forget what I was going to say. I had a thought there and it's gone.
Well, speaking about, it's like what you were talking about before as well. Like, say people call it like spirituality, but you can also just call it a like expanding awareness or something. And these things might expand your awareness, but that doesn't in itself do the work that you got to do. There's work to be done. That's just how it is. That's how I've come to view like magic mushrooms for me as something. If I'm ever at a crossroads in my life and I don't know what work I should be doing, they're a good thing to help me figure that out. But then I still have to go and do it.
Exactly. And also it's just to prepare people for that as well, and to prepare them that when they go into something that they do need to have a clear intention, and they do need to have a willingness, because without your willingness to see what's there, you'll just end up in a loop or in what people call a bad trip, and then you blame the substance and you walk away and you never use it again, and you lose the potential that they had. If the willingness isn't there. And yes, in some cases like ayahuasca, which is a more intense experience, will really show you that resistance if you're fighting it. But just to prepare someone to go into an experience, so I to have that awareness that my willingness needs to be there, to invite that intention into your being, to invite the blocks or the memories or whatever it is that's holding you back, just to invite it to surface and to be willing to see it. And we also really encourage people to have some kind of support around them too, because for me with psychedelics, what they taught me more than anything was that I don't have to do all this work alone. And they made me feel that way. And because prior to that, I had been doing a lot of inner work alone. And yeah, they really showed me that. So just the experience, it's within the experience itself, as you know, you don't feel alone, especially with psilocybin, you
Yeah.
feel guided. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just having someone else off, or another spirit or whatever you want to call it, offering you these answers was really huge for me. But then after, so even for somebody who, for example, is suffering with depression or something else, that is really huge to feel like, okay, I'm not in this alone. But that is only during the experience. To come out of the experience after that, it's really important to try and create some kind of support around you. Otherwise, the discord between what you've experienced during the trip and then the reality of your life afterwards, if you actually are alone, is really, really painful.
Right.
So to have some kind of support around you, a friend to talk to, an integration coach, a Facebook group that just where there's people having similar experiences, is something that we really want to educate people about as well, the importance of that.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like, yeah, if you don't try to take those steps, you could end up sort of chasing the dragon, where it's that high that is the only way you get that connection, and that's a danger as well. It's you can abuse these things too. Like everything can be abused. All these drugs can be abused. Even something like ayahuasca ceremonies in Peru. If you go down every weekend, that's probably not a good thing. You know.
We kind of laugh the way we do it and the integration work we do. I think it's pretty safe to say you're not going to get addicted. It's intense.
Yeah.
It's emotional.
It is intense.
It's intense. It's not something you want to do every week because the insights and everything are flowing afterwards. Like the trip might be over that day, but the next day and the next day, the emotions are still surfacing. And if you're doing, like, using the modalities and the tools that we're using, you're integrating, you're having hugely emotional experiences, and it's huge relief, and you're going to feel so light and amazing afterwards and have energy to move forward in your life. But it's not something you can commit to every weekend. That's for sure.
It's definitely not.
Unless you do it to escape your life, and that is your intention. Then
I think I saw a little thing on your website. I can't remember it now, but that was one. It was like you can either use these to, I forget what the first one was, but then it was like, or escape.
Find yourself.
Yeah,
it's like
right.
Between that's what, like, a whole new high. The name of the website even is about a whole new perspective on how we perceive, how we use, and how we perceive and use drugs in general. And that's the whole new high that it's creating. It's a way to use drugs to find yourself, not to escape yourself, to overcome addiction, not to cause addiction.
Right. Yeah. It seems funny, right? If you talk to people who are very ingrained in the classical education about drugs, how drugs, you get addicted to drugs, to say, like, to talk to someone about something like ibogaine or something where it's like, yeah, you use this really powerful psychedelic drug to cure addiction. People are like, that doesn't make any sense. That's using a drug to cure a drug addiction. Like, it doesn't seem to add up for people, but it's just because of this awareness that it can cause, where you just, well, also ibogaine has very, like, physical properties as well that help with, like, actual withdrawal symptoms and things like that. But it's just like about helping people mentally get over things, and then they make the choice to actually stop addictions and things like that.
It is, but it's also like the addiction is caused by an emptiness inside or pain inside, and you want to escape that pain. So that is what creates the addiction. If you take a substance like ibogaine, which is very powerful, that you cannot use that to escape. It takes you right into your pain. Right. You have to feel it. And while there are some other substances out there you can actually use to escape your pain. Not all the time, but sometimes it works. And then if it doesn't work, they just call it bad trip. But on ibogaine, you can't do that.
Right.
So that is also one of the reasons why ibogaine cures the addiction, because it leads you right to your pain. It gives you, like, goes to the source of why you're addicted.
Right. And that's why it's so scary for people to use these things too. It's like a truth serum or something for you, where you just know you're gonna be shown a mirror to everything you don't want to see. It's very that's why it's challenging Dude, it's not like an always a great fun time doing this stuff. It kind of sucks sometimes. You have to like face all the anxious, depressed thoughts in your head, or all the shame or whatever that is in there, and just shows you it.
Exactly. But the relief that comes from doing that is always,
Yeah, it's
in my,
worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah, it's
because you're living with that pain every day, whether you realize it or not. It's there,
Right.
and you're carrying, and that's the resistance that you're in your everyday life, and that's where the pain is. The pain isn't in being with the shame or seeing the shame, because you already know it's there. You're holding it, you're feeling it in every moment of your life, and it's the relief that comes from actually just admitting that to yourself, or seeing it, or feeling it, or whatever it needs is huge.
Yeah. And what you said about mushrooms, or maybe some of these other substances too, that you take them and you get a feeling like you're not alone, like you're connected to something. Whether it's, sometimes it feels like it's just your higher self or something, or it just feels like something else that knows you really well, or like whatever it is. And you get kind of a deja vu feeling sometimes, like, oh, I've been here before, I remember this kind of thing. And it's those feelings too that make it maybe easier to deal with these things that come up as well. You feel like you're supported, or that you're strong, as well as being weak. You know, at this, you can deal with this stuff. Whereas in maybe everyday, day-to-day consciousness, it's hard to just face things like that are really intense and deep. You really have to get into that state of mind to tackle them, to face them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with psychedelics as well, what they do show you is that whether something's good or bad, it actually, like, that's just a preconceived idea that society has taught us. So shame, for example, is an emotion that is really difficult to face, or anger or something like that. But in some psychedelic experiences, depending on like where you are in your life, you'll actually see that they're all just emotions, and they all feel beautiful when you feel them. So whether you're feeling happy, or whether you're crying in pain, or whether you're letting out some rage, or whatever it is, it just feels amazing, because you're feeling.
Right.
And you're feeling what's been stuck and held inside you, and that is gone, and that is very hard to access in an ordinary state of consciousness, because we've been so heavily programmed or taught or whatever to believe that these emotions are bad,
Right,
and so we can't even get to them. They're like, you know, everything is our anger, our rage, our hurt. All these they're all drowned. They're all covered in shame. So before we can even get to that, we have to face our shame, which is very, very difficult. And with psychedelics, it can actually like remove the shame and say, well, hang on, you were just a little child when this happened. Like, there's nothing to be ashamed about. This wasn't, your fault. This was your environment, and this was a situation that you were in, and that shame is removed. So there's the emotion, and then they're just emotions that you can feel.
Right. Yeah. I feel like that's something I think in myself, I'm going to be doing that in the coming years. Is I believe I probably have repressed just probably laughter and sadness and things that I probably have to get out somehow. I tend to be like I've been called like stoic or whatever. Like, I don't show a lot of my emotions, and I think that's a problem. I don't think it's a good thing. I think I can take confidence in it. I'm strong. But I think also it's to be able to let that stuff out is really good. And what I repeat sometimes on this podcast, from what I've learned with talking with different people who work with psychedelics and things, is it seems like where healing comes from is being able to move through emotions and things, and to move through them, you have to let them out. You have to release them in some way, and that could be anything. It could be through art, it could be through physical work, physical activity, all sorts of things, talk therapy. But it's when you aren't able to release something and you're stuck in it, or it just stays in you, that's where suffering in some way comes from. And that's something I've just come to believe at this point. And so looking at myself, I do believe I'm going to have to find a way. And some of the psychedelic things I've done maybe haven't been enough. I think I'm looking forward to, soon I'm going to be taking a workshop, holotropic breathwork. And I'm pretty excited about that. I haven't done that before, but I've heard a lot about it. And I think maybe I'm going to end up crying my eyes out or something. I don't know.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's And I think just to touch on what you said about like your own experience and being stoic or strong, and I think one of our biggest problems in society today is our misconception of strength. And we have an idea that being strong is holding everything in.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the strongest person in the room is the person who can show their emotions to everyone else. That takes strength. Takes strength. For sure. To let that go. And when you start to look at vulnerability as a strength, it can change a lot for you. And it to me it is. When I see someone who can do that, I have so much admiration. And I was very like you not so long ago. Yeah. Back then. And psychedelics really helped me with that.
I think what's important in that scenario too is that you not like in some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases, you have a missing experience from your childhood, and showing your emotions, like having your emotions received by somebody else. So if you go into a psychedelic experience alone and you do feel your emotions, but you're alone, it's not enough for you to fully heal this trauma. It's like you need to be with someone who is capable of fully receiving your emotions and not trying to say like, oh no, there's no reason to be sad, there's no reason to be angry, just calm down, everything was fine. Like if you get that kind of reaction, that's just like a shock to your system again, and you're like, okay, then I'll just do it the same way that I've always done it.
Bottle it up.
But if you're with someone who can just be there and hold space for everything that you are and everything that you're going through, that's where the healing comes from. And that's when you have the experience, yes, it's okay to have my emotions, and somebody else is just there with me and loves me that way with all of my emotions.
And doesn't need me to change.
Yeah, and there's no need to change anything. And then you have this missing experience that you didn't have as a child, and that will automatically change it. So it will be a natural byproduct of
that. Changes things on a somatic level then.
Somatic?
So if you're like what Alice was saying, if you're trying to like show your emotions, but then you take psychedelics and you've nobody to show your emotions to, the physical experiences hasn't changed for you. So if there's actually somebody there who can hold you or listen to you or just see you, it changes things in your internal being, and you've had a physically different experience in that. Socially, and just that part of you is actually having a physical experience that something can be different, because up until that point in your life, you've never had it any other way. So intellectually, you might know, oh yeah, it's okay to show your emotions to people, but internally, the part of you that's been suppressed since 4 or 5 or whatever age that happened when you learned that part of you doesn't know that it's a possibility to show your emotions to other people, because it's never experienced it. So emotionally, there's an aspect that doesn't actually understand that. So to have the experience with somebody else is what changes it and shifts it, because then those parts of you see that there's other possibilities.
So maybe we can transition then to talking about what sort of work you guys are doing actually with people. And I don't know if it's, maybe you can just tell me about it, because I don't know much about what you're doing. If you're leading groups or if you're working people kind of a one-on-one type of situations, or.
Well, we are organizing retreats, and we also do one-on-one sessions. This year we're going to have a retreat in the Netherlands with Psilocybin, where it's legal in the form of truffles. So we do, like in Portugal, everything is decriminalized, but we are still not allowed to give substances to people. So this is something we cannot do here, except for some substances that are unregulated, so that we can work with, like 1P LSD, which is very similar experience to LSD. We can work with Yopo. We do work with Kambo. So we do ceremonies, but we also do private sessions with these substances here in Portugal and also in other countries.
Depending on what the laws are.
It always depends on what the laws are in the country that we're in, because we do want to, we want to speak publicly about what we're doing, but we don't want to do anything illegal, so we have to work with the laws of the country. But in a session, if it's a group session or if it's an individual session, it is all about, like, the person comes with an intention. We help the person to really get in touch with what they want and to form an intention that will lead them very deeply and that will answer a question for them that they cannot answer by themselves. And we make sure that during their experience, like, they will be their own guide. They will connect to their inner healer. But if they drift off somewhere, we just make sure we'll bring them back on track by reminding them of their intuition, of their intention. And then what's very important is what we were just talking about, is that if emotions come up, we are there to be fully present with them, to receive them, and we use our, like, female intuition to like, give the person emotionally what they need in that moment, what they have never experienced, like a missing experience from their parents, especially from their mother. And that's what we give them, and we give it like either through words or with touch, just holding someone while they're crying. And that changes the experience for them. That's, and
most of us have never had that experience, which is crazy. Like, as a child, if you cried, you were punished. Like, if you did something, you were punished. You were sent to your room. You were put into isolation. So we learned that, if I'm angry, which is an emotion that's not acceptable in my house, not only is it not okay. So I learned that it's not okay to have anger, but I'm actually put into isolation. I lose the connection from the person who all my needs depend on. So anger is suppressed. Okay, from this day forward, I will not associate any part of me with anger. I'm going to suppress that aspect of myself. And we're upset and we're crying in the moment. So most of us are pushed away at that point in our childhood. So to actually just have somebody and hold you while you cry through an emotion is a huge deal. And not trying to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's the key. Like, you're not trying to fix it for somebody. All the emotion needs is to be expressed, and the person cries and has their emotion, and it's allowed without judgment, and the connection is remained. That's the most important thing that we never received in our childhood, that we don't lose connection because we're having an emotion. And that makes emotions feel safe again.
Right.
So
that's I was gonna say that's something I've learned to do. I don't work with people with psychedelics quite yet, but I've been working with people who how could I say it? Who just have different forms of suffering, say, going on, or just my girlfriend who has emotional things going on once in a while. And I think it's a guy thing, maybe, to want to fix it all the time, to just be like, oh, this is a problem. Here, let me give you some options. You could do this. Why don't you do this? This will work. And it's yeah, but I've learned it's not always what people actually need, though. They can fix it for themselves. They'll figure out how to fix it. It's just like a human thing. People need to connect with what they're feeling and have someone listen and just be there to experience it with them or something.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, if you have an emotion like sadness, for example, the crying is the relief of the emotion. So if another person then blocks the crying, there is no relief and the emotion gets stuck in your body. And will stay there for years until you're 80 or 90 or until you die, if you never go back there and fully experience it. So that's what we do. We bring people back to memory, like to situations in their past where they had an experience like that, and we give them validation and also the missing experience. And then also sometimes if we can do parts work as well while people are on psychedelics, leading them to parts that they're not seeing, or when they find them through the help of psychedelics, talk to these aspects and help them to solve the inner conflict.
Find out what their needs are.
Yeah.
And also inner child work is something that we do as well. and just to like connect to the inner child and what the inner child needs, and to just, it's kind of the same thing really, to take it through the experience, the missing experience. But also just to go back on what you were saying as well on trying to fix things. When we try and fix another person's emotion, we're confirming that how they're feeling isn't okay.
Right.
Something wrong with you, which is actually re-traumatizing.
Right.
Which is re-traumatizing for the person. It's like saying, okay, there's something wrong, I need to fix it, even though from your heart you're trying to help them, and we're trying to help them when we're in that mode. But for the person on the other end, they're just being confirmed that the way you feel right now is not okay. And we do that because we're not comfortable with how they're feeling. Because if Alice is crying and I want to fix it, essentially I want to stop her crying. That's what I'm trying to do, because it's making me uncomfortable. So it's just about being able to sit here and being like, you can cry, it's fine, and I can hold you or put my arms around you, or just tell you that it's okay to be upset. Like, it's perfectly valid or reasonable to be upset right now. Of course you'd be upset.
Right.
And then moves. That's what allows the emotion to move through us, and nothing needs to be fixed.
Yeah. I like a weird kind of, that's like a silly example, I feel like, but it was a little thing that was eye-opening for me. It was my girlfriend was watching this show called Grey's Anatomy. Have you heard of this show?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a sexy doctor drama all the time. Just
I've never seen it, but I've heard of it.
but she was watching this show so much, and I was like, why are you so into this show? And she said, it always makes me cry, is what she said. She said, I can watch it and I can cry because I get so into the characters, and it just allows me to cry. And to me, I thought, that's like a different thing. Like, I hadn't thought that was like a reason you would watch something, right? To end up crying. But it made sense after I thought about it, that was a way to move through, to release those things, to have that reaction. And one thing I wanted to touch on too, just what you mentioned earlier, about Portugal, that Portugal has been getting a lot of press because of the drug laws, and I guess what you said was the drugs are decriminalized there, but that doesn't mean you can go open an ayahuasca retreat and a mushroom thing, and you can't publicly do this stuff still. It's just that you're not going to get criminal charges for that.
Well, the thing is, it's decriminalized for personal consumption. So that means if somebody comes to Portugal and says, I want to do a mushroom trip, it's still not legal, but it's not a criminal act. And in that case, we could also lead them through it, but we are not allowed to give them the mushrooms, because that is like drug dealing, which is still
illegal.
And but even for personal consumption, it is not legal. But if they catch you, and they still do controls, much less than in other countries, then you are sent to therapy.
Okay, yeah, I see.
So you still have consequences, but you will not get sent to prison.
So you guys still have to travel to places like the Netherlands or somewhere where it is legal to actually to give people some psychedelic substances and work with them. I think Jamaica, I heard mushrooms are legal there as well. There's someone who opened a retreat there. Peru, obviously. There's places all around, but it makes it for more of a logistical, challenging thing to organize, I guess, for people who are trying to put on these retreats.
Yeah, but then there are also substances that are unregulated, like yopo, for example. 5-MeO DMT is not regulated in Portugal. It's not on the list. So that is a substance we can work with here. 1P-LSD is unregulated here. Kambo is unregulated here, and we love doing Kambo ceremonies.
Right. That's the case with Iboga in Canada, or Ibogaine. It's unregulated. It's not exactly legal, but it's not illegal. It's kind of a gray area. So people have been able to open up actual, like sort of, I wouldn't say retreats, but it's more focused. The Ibogaine is more focused on helping people with opiate addiction. And so there's been some sort of clinics, I guess maybe you could say, or people who've opened up practices with administering Iboga to people here, just because of that gray area where it's kind of legal, kind of not.
Iboga isn't something that we personally would work with. There's certain plant medicines that we firmly believe are like a specialized shaman is required to work with Iboga.
Someone with a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we would work with someone if they needed preparation to go into an experience like that or integration afterwards, but not the experience itself. That's for
Right. So what are the things that you guys do work with?
Well, we work with Psilocybin. We love to work with Psilocybin. That's where we organize a retreat in the Netherlands at the end of the year. We work with Kambo regularly. We organize ceremonies all around Europe.
So Kambo is, can you explain to people what Kambo is?
Kambo is a frog poison that is used by indigenous tribes in the Amazon as a physical cleanse, but at the same time it is also an emotional cleanse. You burn little holes on your skin that's like very fast, it doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Then apply a little but it sounds more painful.
It's very fast.
It's very fast. Then you apply the Kambo on the burns, and then it goes into your blood flow. And before you do that, you drink 2 liters of water. And then the Kambo is a very short experience. It lasts 15 minutes to half an hour. It completely reboosts your immune system. It takes toxins out of their hidden places and brings it into circulation, and then you vomit it out. The vomit often is black, even though you have not eaten anything before. And then you see how much toxins are in your body, and you see you have black vomit in front of you. And it's a relief to get these toxins out of your system. But it's not only physical cleansing, it's also emotional cleansing. It's like, especially for people who are very resistant to feeling, it's very effective method. It's not gentle, it's very difficult.
But it's brief.
It will bring you in touch with your resistance while it's on you for 15 minutes, 30 to 30 minutes, sometimes only 5. But then you vomit, and that's so relieving. And then for the rest of the day and for the next days or weeks, you have emotions that you used to suppress. You just come up, and there's nothing you can do. It's like your resistance is gone, and they just come up, and you're in the flow, and you can just show them and be with them.
So it brings a lot of insights and clarity, and but it's not a psychedelic experience whatsoever. You're completely in your body. You don't leave. It's not hallucinogenic. It's not
no visions.
Like you're nothing. It's not a psychedelic. It's not even. It's very physical, and you're in your complete awareness for the whole time.
Now, someone who's maybe skeptical would think, so you're talking about putting a frog's poison into your bloodstream and then vomiting, and then so when you're talking about like puking up black matter, would the amount of black matter coming out of you is more than what would be put in through the burns? So it's not like it's just the whatever poison coming out, but there's more.
No, it's actually a signal of how healthy you are, because some people vomit, like they vomit and it's completely clear. It's just some people vomit and it's black, so that's your own toxins.
Right.
The frog poisoning itself will not color the water in your stomach.
It's not everyone who will vomit black black liquid. And
it has been there have been studies, even scientific studies with Kambo, and Kambo just like it is a toxin, but it also has some like chemicals in it. I'm not good with science, so I cannot give you the exact names, but I think it's called peptides. It has peptides that are doing something to your system. I wish I could explain it, but
that's not my strong point either.
It is starting to be recognized by the medical field, and doctors who are more open-minded are using it as part of their therapy. And anyone who's skeptical, I would suggest that they try it.
Right. So you guys, obviously, you've tried it before administering it with other people, and you've come to the conclusion, like, it is. The thing about poison is like anything can be a poison. at a certain dose. It's all about the dose. Salt can be poisonous at a certain dose. So can water. So, and it seems like much things that are poisonous can be medicinal as well. It's all sort of how we use it, and that's sort of what we were talking about before with drugs.
And the thing about Cambo, if you were to ingest it, it would poison you. But when it doesn't go through the digestive tract, it actually can go into your bloodstream and it can pull out toxins.
Now, do you like feel like terrible for days after using this?
No.
Some people do. Very rare cases. It's very rare, but it can happen.
Okay.
You feel terrible while the Cambo is applied on your skin, and you'll begin to feel incredibly warm and hot and puffy. And you will feel very uncomfortable until you vomit. And that can be anywhere between 5 and 15 to 30 minutes. Then once you purge, we remove the Cambo from the person's skin, and they'll still feel a bit shaky. Obviously, they vomited and have been uncomfortable, and really we'll bring them into a place of rest then. And they'll go into a meditative state. They'll begin to feel emotions move within them. They'll feel insights coming through. And depending on the person and what they've experienced, you can feel amazing for the rest of the day, energetic. You could feel very restful and just at peace, but you'll feel a huge clearing. It's like, when you can feel an emotional block in your throat or in your heart. And what we actually do is we work with the chakras on the body, because the Cambo can be applied on different parts of the body. Traditionally, men had them on their arm and women had them on their leg, but we actually work, so if a person's having an issue, depending on what the issue is, we match that with the chakra in their body. And you know that feeling when you've got a knot in your stomach, or you want to express something and your throat's restricted.
Right. Yeah.
And that is the movement that Cambo offers. It brings up the emotion that's stuck there, and you feel the physical relief from that.
Is it difficult you said it's from a toad or frog. Is it difficult to acquire Cambo?
Well, it is not difficult to acquire because you can just buy it online, because it's not illegal anywhere in the world, except in Brazil. They have it's a kind of an issue in Brazil. It's the only country. So you can buy it online, but the quality of the Cambo often is not the best, because there are certain tribes that are actually abusing the frog to produce more poison.
Yeah, I've heard of that. With 5-MeO DMT as well as extracted from frogs or toads, and I've heard people talk about that too. That some of the poor frogs are just abused for their whatever chemical they excrete. But you can do it in a gentle way too.
Yes, and the thing is, if you abuse the frog, the Cambo frog, to do it, it will only give you poison in the first moment of fright. And then afterwards, there will still be this slimy liquid on his back, but there's actually no more poison in it. So you will find Cambo sticks that are, at the beginning of the stick is very potent, and then the end of the stick is not at all, because the frog actually has not produced any more of the poison. So it doesn't really work. And so it is easy to get Cambo, but it's not easy to get good Cambo.
Okay.
And the quality of the Cambo is hugely important to us, along with the welfare of the animal, and that's something we make sure is it's really important to us. And we work with a shaman in Costa Rica with Cambo, and we make sure we have a supply from a traditional tribe who respect the frog.
Right. It's a little bit funny that toads or frogs have these psychedelic, or not that it sounds like Cambo isn't exactly psychedelic, but these powerful agents that they excrete. It's like a lot of those fairy tales must have something to them. Must have come from somewhere. You can get DMT out of toads and Cambo. Who knows what else out there? Yeah. Okay, so
that's where the Prince and the Frog story came from.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. There's got to be something to that. Too big of a coincidence otherwise.
A lot more people than frogs these days.
Yeah, and we feel also it's very very beneficial to combine certain substances. So in our retreat, we'll start with Cambo, before we do go deeper with psilocybin. So combo is like the cleanse. We take everything off, like we release a lot of resistance that is there, and then the psilocybin can guide us to what we need to know. So the combining of two substances or more substances
can be
very beneficial for what we are doing.
Yeah. I saw posts on your website as well. It sounds like I don't know if this is something you do with other people, or if this is something that you just do for yourselves, but use MDMA and LSD, and it sounds like sometimes in combination, sometimes not.
Yeah, that's what we do with ourselves, because these are highly illegal substances, unfortunately, all around the world. So we can't give that to people unless they are in Portugal, where it's decriminalized, and they bring their own supply and they want to do it themselves, and then we can get them through, but we cannot give them the substance.
Right. That's sort of like, I guess that's the, I could say loophole, but it's just, that's how it would work, is you can't sell anything to anyone or give it, but if they have their own supply of something, it sounds like it would be okay and maybe encouraged that they seek support and help for using this stuff. That's got to be okay in Portugal, right?
It's really okay, because there's a festival here called Boom Festival that happens every 2 years. It will happen again this summer, and they actually have a laboratory on the festival, so they know drugs are being sold on the festival, and the police doesn't come and check it. I've never been there, except for people who enter the festival. Sometimes they check the cars, but they come onto the festival to check it there. So on the festival, there's a lot of like drugs being sold, and then if you buy your MDMA or your LSD, you can go to the laboratory and check if it's actually clean.
Get it tested, yeah.
You get it tested for free, and that, like, the Portuguese government knows about that, and they totally support.
Yeah, I really like that. That's something I talk about on this podcast too. The whole other thing, we get into this stuff about psychedelic drugs being just having this huge potential for benefit for people, being able to help people and all this stuff. But there's also this other side of prohibition of drugs that, like, you just don't know what's in street drugs. It's more dangerous that way. To have them unregulated and just in the black market is just a terrible idea. It's not helping anybody. It's putting money in the hands of drug gangs and criminals, and making it more dangerous for people who are using these things. And it's not actually stopping people from using them either. They're already, say, going to music festivals or wherever, just going downtown and buying whatever they want. It's very easy to get drugs, and basically everywhere. One thing I like to point out is, like, some of the most heavy drug users in most communities are homeless people. Like, the homeless population has access to basically any drug they can afford, and they're some of the people who have the least amount of power in our society. So the war on drugs is just not working. It's not working in any sense, no matter how you look at it. So for people who maybe aren't into any of the psychedelic stuff, I like to point that out, that just changing some of these drug laws is going to be beneficial in all kinds of different ways.
Yeah, it was very beneficial for, like, the addiction rates in Portugal went down dramatically, and also the death rates of, like, heroin use, like, caused by heroin, went down by, I think, a fourth in the last 16 years since they.
And crime rates, just overall crime rates reduced dramatically too.
And that was just from decriminalization.
Yeah, just from a teenager's point of view or whatever, it just makes you more curious. Like, it's like, oh, I want to try. Like, let's get some of it.
Forbidden fruit,
or rebellion into it.
It makes it cool.
Yeah, it's just encouraging people further, and then they're being encouraged to do it in an unsafe way or in an unsupportive way, which isn't helping anybody.
Yeah, it seems like that. Yeah, like you said, that's some part of your message, is just changing the culture around drugs, around how we look at drugs, what we think they can be used for, and removing some of that stigma attached to certain things.
And actually in changing how we take them and what we take them for. Our intention is everything. Our intention is everything. If we're doing them to escape them, we're going to get, that's what we'll get. We'll get a feeling of escape. If we're doing them to actually find out why we want to escape in the first place, well, then we're onto something.
Yeah, that actually matters. Like what you think about before you take the context that you're taking the drug and actually does matter a lot. It actually changes the whole thing.
It's everything. It's not that it matters, it's everything. Because your intention is there whether you're conscious or not.
Yeah.
Whether you got it whether you sit down and write down a message to yourself or just say to yourself, this is why I'm doing it. That's your conscious intention. If you're doing it to escape yourself, that's most likely subconscious, but it's still your intention. So the thing is to get clear that your intention is steering the ship no matter what. So make it a conscious one.
Yeah. And then I talked about this with someone a few podcasts ago where just having the drugs illegal, you're sending the message that drugs are bad. And if you use them, you're bad. You shouldn't be using them. You're a criminal. You're not a welcome member of our community. So if you're a teenager who's going to experiment with marijuana, don't talk to us about it because we're going to judge you for it, and then when you're a person who chooses to take something, in your head you have a sort of subconscious psychology telling you, oh, I might be a bad person. The people around me think I'm a bad person. I'm bad for doing this. I have to do this. I have to hide in a dark alley to do this or something.
To lie about it. It's immediately creating shame. So what am I going to escape my shame, which is the worst feeling on the planet? I need something to escape from. I'm going to go back to the drugs where I felt great, and it's just going to amplify the situation, or it's going to, elevate that person's need for escape.
Right. So maybe to go back to the retreats or one-on-one work that you guys are doing with people, how many people would you welcome into, say, your retreat you're going to do with psilocybin?
8 people.
Up to 8. And then would it be just you two facilitating it?
Yes.
Yes.
I see. Okay. And how often would you do something like that? Is that... because if you have to do it in the Netherlands, so you have to sort of arrange, you have to like rent out some like a space that you can use, and I'm sure there's a lot of organizational stuff that goes into that. And then
it's not something that we do so often. We really like to keep our groups small and intimate because we want to give everyone there the attention that they need. We feel that is really important, and it's also nice to have an intimate group, like a smaller number where people can really connect with each other. And like we've talked already about the importance of support, and like that's part of why we love the group ceremony or the retreat, is to create that feeling of support, which most people don't have in their lives, and to create that connection. And you don't spend a week with 7, 8 other people and be in your biggest vulnerability and walk away and never see those people again. It doesn't happen. You're creating relationships there,
right? And
that's really special. But they are a big event, and they're not something we do every week. Like, there's something maybe every like 3-4 months.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that for?
So the retreat is going to be the first official retreat like that, but we have worked with groups before in different countries. We're not going to say which countries now.
Right.
But we have been doing the work with the entheogen and the parts work. We've been doing that since 3 years. And like we have worked with shamans, we were assistants first. And And
then previous to that, I was working with entheogens for several years, with parts work, with inner child work, with integration work. And with just raising consciousness internally and prior to that.
So I'm a little bit curious about how you're going to structure, say, working with psilocybin, because I've always kind of had the assumption that one day I will probably work with people with psilocybin. That's something I've thought about for years now, before I started this podcast. My whole thought, side note, was just like, I want to do it openly, publicly, with respect. I don't want to be in the dark doing it. So I thought, okay, well, the work to do then is to legalize it first. So I'm going to educate people, start a podcast, get the laws changed, and then I'll do that work. So because I picture myself doing that one day, I'm curious, what's the sort of setup you arrange for working with a group like that with psilocybin? Like, do you have say a bunch of mats set out in a big room and everyone sort of lays down? Are you like drumming or chanting, or what sort of things do you arrange?
Well, yeah, we do have mats, and everybody is in a circle. If people feel the need that they want to leave the circle to be on their own, they can. But we prefer if they stay in the cycle. We do not have drumming, but we do have a music list that we specifically created for the psilocybin experience, so that it will take you into your emotions. Yeah, and then we for us, it's very important not to give them only the psilocybin experience, but the integration afterwards. So this retreat is 7 days, and we'll start with combo. We have 2 psilocybin sessions in it, but we also have 3 days that are there just to integrate the experience, and we have the exercises, different tools that people are going to use to really fully understand their experience, and also see how they can now apply that insight into their daily life when they are not with us anymore.
Yeah, we'll also have exercises for connection, like different processes and tools that will teach people how to get in touch with their vulnerability, to bring people to a place that they're more comfortable with their vulnerability, and the integration is hugely important too. So the week is spread out, and it's very consciously thought out of what people need through the whole experience. It's not just about the psilocybin, although that's a huge component of it, but it's a whole experience, and it's about connection, it's about gaining clarity, it's about getting answers, it's about creating change in your life. One of the most important things the retreats provide are steps for people to take home with them. So the practices that we're talking about, the modalities that we use, we're teaching people those tools. We're giving them to take home with them, so that when, they're not in a safe, closed environment like what we create in the retreat, and they're back in the real world, that they actually have something tangible that they can use in their everyday life.
Some
and
techniques.
Exactly. And also just we help them to get in touch with what the steps are. So during their psilocybin experience, like what information they gained, what they learned, what they became aware of that they need to change in their life. Okay, it's great to have that information, but then we take it further and we're like, okay, what are the action steps? How do you get there?
Yeah, and that's important.
It's really important. So they've got something to go home with, and they feel confident going home that, okay, this is something I can do, I can implement.
So I'm just curious, so is it like, say the first day everyone shows up and you do the Campbell on that first day?
The first day is just for showing up, and then the first day of the retreat is Campbell.
Yeah, we let everyone show up and kind of just
meet each other and get comfortable
and relax. And
then would you do the first psilocybin the same say evening as like the Campbell, or the sort of next day?
The next day.
Okay. And then and I'm just very curious, because and then after, say, the next day you do psilocybin, do you take like what, a few 2-3 days and then the final psilocybin, or how do you do that?
Okay, wait, I'll give you the schedule.
Okay.
First day people are going to arrive, just meet and greet, get comfortable, talk about your intention. The second day is Kambo, where we do also work with rapé, which is a shamanic snuff powder.
I've heard of that as well.
That works really well together with Kambo. So first the rapé, then the Kambo, and also already, like before the Kambo starts, a connection exercise in the morning. Then on day 3 and day 4.
Just to pause you in a second, that's like the connection exercise in the morning that we just like. That's really important. That's about creating a safe space where everyone feels like, okay, safe to be around all these people that they've just met, and it creates more of an intimacy. It creates trust. It creates, okay, we're all in this together. It's safety, it's connection, and it's hugely important. And it's the groundwork it's the foundation of the week ahead. And it's like, really important.
Yes, I agree.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's good that you mentioned that. I just wanted to get through it really fast. Then we have, out of the first psilocybin experience, we'll have 2 days of integration, where we'll talk about what like the experience. We'll share very vulnerably in an intimate space. We have some exercises about where people are going to use parts work to connect to the parts that they found while they were on their psilocybin journey. And we teach them parts work. We also focus on what is the missing experience that they need also in the integration days, not only when they're on psilocybin. Maybe they found something on psilocybin that was really deep, something that they really need in their lives. So we focus on how the people can give it to each other. And then we'll have another psilocybin. Which day are we at now? 1, 2, 3, 4. On day 5 is another psilocybin experience. And then day 6 is integration day. And day 7 in the morning still like integration exercises, and then people will be.
Yeah, that sounds like a good way to lay it out. That you have also on the days off, you have some things planned, scheduled to integrate or to work on what they had gone through and find other ways of looking at what happened and talking about it.
And we do not want anybody to leave without having created, like, they will help each other and we will help them to create an action plan of how they can actively change their life according to what they found out. So that is what the most important thing is. Like in the retreat, they will gain clarity, and the outcome will be changed, like the desired change. So patterns will change.
Yeah. It'll also be very fluid too. We always have an outline of what we're going to do, but of course that depends and changes dramatically on the group, and that's something that we like the group to be a part of and have choice in, like how they're feeling. Like, example, they may not be ready to do it, depending on the group, they may not be ready to do another psilocybin trip. They may be ready to do it sooner. And that's always flexible, and it's always something that we talk about as a group, like how everyone's feeling. Is this suitable to continue with, or do we need another day? Do we need to go out in nature for the afternoon? And that's always like
flexible. And then in that sense, it's good that you do have like 7 days to work with, that you can, if things have to be moved around. I know I went and did ayahuasca in Peru a couple of years ago, and it was they had a pretty big group there that I was with. Like over 20 people, I think. And they had 4 different ayahuasca ceremonies scheduled throughout, I think it was 7 or 8 days as well. And I think maybe after the first or second one, there were so many people who were like just having a tough time that next day that they postponed one of the following ceremonies till the following day too, just because they could see the group was struggling a little bit or just was tired and whatnot. And I know that what ended up happening was the last 2 ceremonies ended up being back to back, one night after the other. And that was very challenging. I know for me, I was exhausted for the final ceremony that we had, because we're doing them at night, staying up till maybe 3, 4 in the morning, going to bed, getting up at like 8. So you're not getting a whole lot of sleep, because like the crickets, it was in the Amazon jungle. So all the forest noises are picking up and the lights coming out. So hard to sleep all day. And I know that was a struggle for me. So after doing that, I thought about how they had structured that, and I thought, maybe 4 in a week is probably maybe too many ceremonies, especially with ayahuasca. You're throwing up and all this, kind of hard on the body a bit. So it sounds like what you guys have structured is a pretty good plan. Like a week with two psilocybin, one of the Cambo. I don't know much about the Rapé. Maybe you could tell. It has an unfortunate name because when you see it spelled, it's it's got the accent on the E, but it still looks like rape, which is a tough sub. I don't even know much about it. Maybe you could talk a bit about what that is.
It's a powder. It's a snuff that is often made with tobacco, not all the time, but not with tobacco, but the special kind of tobacco, mapacho, which is one form of tobacco.
that was in Peru. We smoked mapacho.
Yes, and it has 9 times more nicotine than the tobacco.
Yeah.
So it's very potent. It's very different than smoking. But this is mixed with other plants, and there are many different kinds of rapé, and they all have different strength. Some of them are very masculine energies, some of them are very feminine energies, and they really help you also to move through emotions. So if you are in a state where you feel like, oh my god, you can feel an emotion is stuck here, and then you blow it up your nose, it brings you into your body and you feel the emotions, and it also for a second or for some minutes your mind just becomes completely blank. And you can just sink into the emotion.
Right, I see.
And let the emotion do what it needs to do to come out. It's a very short experience. It can take up to an hour, but usually it's 15 minutes to half an hour. Sometimes, in rare cases, it can take 3 hours. It's very rare. It depends on how much you take.
It's used for meditation. It can bring you into a really nice meditative place as well.
Yeah, I see. So it's a combination. So rapé is a combination of different plants, and it can sort of vary slightly depending on who's making it and whatnot. But
it can vary greatly, actually. It's made by many different tribes, and many tribes have their own recipe. So you don't. Well, I don't know if recipe is the right word, but their own formula. And each tribe will use different plants and different energies that they're putting into it. So the variations will actually differ quite a lot, and you can use certain ones for certain things. You know, some will be great for a meditative place, some will be great stress relievers, some will be great to bring you into your body, some will be great to maybe take you out of your body a little bit. So you can really have many different experiences with it.
Yeah, with the that Peruvian tobacco being one of the main ingredients, that mapacho, we smoked a lot of that at that same retreat I was at in Peru. They had full ceremonies with mapacho where, like, early on, what did they do? I think everyone was given one, and you'd go off into the forest and smoke quite a bit of this mapacho tobacco, and then it was like an intention setting ceremony they made. So you'd think about what you wanted to get out of the whole thing, and it was useful. But I do remember that tobacco, it definitely, I mean, it was strong in nicotine. I remember them saying that as well, and it put me into that place you described of just your mind kind of being blank. That it stopped all that constant stream of thoughts going through your mind for a bit, and I like that. It is sort of meditative. I could see how that, in combination with some other things, could be a cool experience.
It can put you into a place of feeling, but what it's really best for is a stuck emotion. To move through a stuck emotion, and it will just allow you to move through that. It's really good.
Can also be used after a ceremony, like, for example, LSD, where you fly really high to bring you back down to ground.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, maybe it could be a good little sort of backup then if you need some grounding or something. Getting a little too scary.
It also is really good in the shamans use it in ayahuasca ceremonies and moments where people are stuck and they are in resistance and they can't move through the emotion. They come with rapé and they blow it up your nose, and then that moment is it's a shock just for a second, but this shock takes you out of your mind and takes away the control that you're trying to gain, and then you can just let go and move through. So it really helps with that.
And it's you can actually moderate it as well, depending on the portion size that you take. It's a powder, so you can decide, okay, if you want to have a gentle experience or a more intense experience. So it's
okay. I think we can probably wrap it up here fairly soon. Yeah, it's been almost an hour and a half here, but I would like to ask you just a little bit more about psilocybin and your what you're setting up there, and what else do you feel is important? Say, if you're looking at having 8 people during and they're all going to be on psilocybin at the same time. I have a couple of questions of just, so one is, are you going to take any yourself as the facilitators? Are you going to be taking a small dose of psilocybin too?
Yeah, we do take a small dose of psilocybin, but just we say a microdose.
Okay, yeah.
A bit more than a microdose,
Mhm.
just to vibe on the same frequency with the
Yeah.
people. We are there to fully support them.
Yeah, that
And
makes
that's
sense.
why-
So you want to have your capacities about you too, in case an emergency or something.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's good to just be in the same realm or in the same zone as them a little bit.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're capable of, like, if there's an emergency, to bring people to the hospital, or if anything like that would
Yeah.
ever happen. But we're still also on the same frequency as them.
And then,
Yeah,
so
but
what about
a very minor amount, just to.
Yeah.
With dosing? How do you already know what how many grams, say, you're going to give each person, or if you're going to vary depending on the person, how much you give them, or?
It varies depending on the person. We have like a very good therapeutic dose is around 2 grams, but then it depends on the person of, like,
Their weight, their tolerance, their past experience,
Right.
other substances, the level of resistance they hold. There's a lot of variables that need to be taken into consideration.
Mhm.
And
if they're really scared and they don't want to go so deep, they can just get half of the dose. So
if it's their first time, they can have a small dose and see how it feels. And if they're like,
Right.
okay, then they can take the rest of their dose. They can half it. It's very personal as well. And, the person is included in that, and what their needs are, how they're going to feel, what they actually want.
Yeah, and then I guess part of the benefit of having multiple ceremonies or sessions is that they could start small the first time and then judge off of that the next time how much they want.
Yeah. And even within the ceremony, they can start small, and then an hour later be like,
Right,
okay,
yeah,
we're
just take some
comfortable
more.
with this. Especially in your first time, they can be like, they have no idea what's going to happen. Okay, I'm really comfortable with this. This is fine. I'll take a little bit more, and they can go from there.
Right, and then so you also said you made you've created a playlist of music. I'm just wondering what you think the importance of music is, and will you be playing music the entire time, or sort of what kind of music it is?
It's not the entire time, and the kind of music. Oh, I'm so bad with what because I don't even know the names of the artists. We have this amazing music selection from a friend who has.
And also from our own experiences, we've collected them. And to me, music is hugely important. And especially when we're in a state of consciousness like we are with psilocybin or another substance, where we're actually we're connecting at a different wavelength, and we're connecting with the resonance of that music. And music, even in our normal state of being, touches us so emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And so the playlists that we designed are designed to carry people through. So the beginning of their journey, where they're just settling in, it's calming. And from there, it carries them through. It becomes more evoking. It brings them to a point, and we time that with the peak of the experience itself, of the substance affecting them.
Mm-hmm.
And we how long that experience is, how long that peak is, and then we allow the music to take them and carry them into a gentler place from there. But I believe music is very powerful, with or without substances, for carrying anyone through an emotion.
Yeah.
And it can be, and it's part of the setting, it's part of the experience, it's as important as the room,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's good to take that serious, that you're creating the entire environment, and that the sounds are going to be a big part of that. And it definitely can change things when you're in that suggestive state. That little changes can.
Yeah. I believe the environment affects everything, and that goes with any time you have a drug experience. So if you're in a nightclub where you're surrounded by people trying to escape themselves, and there's noise, the energies, that's affecting your experience. If you're in a room, everything affects the experience, the people who are there. So that's why it's so important for us to create a really sacred space, a safe space, an emotionally safe space where people feel feel that. And everything in the room is important, and the music is a huge part of it. Yeah.
And so what about lights? I'm just curious if you're planning on doing it in sort of relative darkness, or what time of night or day too, if it's at night or in the day.
Well, one of the experiences will be at nighttime, and the other one will be at daytime. So the nighttime one will be dark, and the daytime one will be with daylight.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna do both. Oh, that's cool. I know, because there's all sorts of different opinions on this stuff. A lot of people are sort of swearing by Terence McKenna's thoughts of silent darkness, and you take a high dose and you close your eyes and you lay in bed, and that too. I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking about how being around people actually changes their experience as well, and you can maybe for someone looking for that sort of healing type of aspect of this, maybe that is the better way to go. Whereas some people use this stuff and are more trying to explore things. They're trying to explore, say, their consciousness or other dimensions, as some people refer to it. But maybe that healing aspect, maybe that's where a community or a group comes into play more.
We actually encourage both, and yes, being on your own for part of it is a big part of it, and the beginning of it, it's hugely important that the person goes inwards and is alone, and is in a dark environment within the circle that we create. When connection with the other person is needed during the experience, as if emotions are coming up. Some people at a ceremony might spend the entire time in their mat and may not even speak to us or want us there, because they'll be in that place, and that's perfect if they need. But somebody else might actually need to have a physical experience where they're being held. They might be coming up with emotions that they don't know what to do with. They might be in a loop. They might be just wanting to be held or touched or supported or advised or counseled or whatever. Or they might experience parts work before, and they might want to explore it because they've got all this access to their aspects. And that's when we're there and we're engaging with them. But for somebody who wants to be on their own and have an inward experience too within the realm of a group, and just to have the support afterwards to share it with as well.
Yeah. That's okay too. Yeah. What else was I going to ask about I can't remember now. So, as far as like the dose too, you guys are going to take a small dose. What would you like, a half a gram or something, or a gram if they're taking 2 to 3-ish?
Oh, even less.
Not even.
Oh, yeah. Even less than that. Okay, so it'd be a very, very minor amount. Cool. Yeah, when I picture myself working with something like that, probably at least early on, it would be maybe one-on-one type of things. It's cool that you guys are going to be leading a group of 8 people. I mean, it's a lot of people, and I assume you're doing like some kind of pre-screening maybe beforehand, just to know who's coming and if they're doing it for, say, reasons that are in line with what you're trying to offer. And and I assume someone who's going to pay and travel and come to meet you guys from this, they're probably not going to be there to just party or have a silly experience or something. I mean, you never know, but it's kind of a lot of hassle to go through just for a goof.
Yeah. There's a lot easier ways to go party on drugs than to just travel to do with us. You really don't need to go to a retreat.
Right. And that just points to what we were talking about, that like by setting it up this way and creating this group experience and things, people are already setting their attention by going to this because they know what it's about. They know why you guys are putting it on and what your intentions are. So they're going to sort of fall in line with that to some extent, and it creates a different experience for people. And
we'll do a little bit of work with people before that to help them prepare as well.
And okay, my final question about like how you're setting up the psilocybin ceremonies here is what about eating and drinking water? Is it like I've talked to other people who work with psilocybin. One person in particular said that he sets up they cook a huge feast in advance, and that once it's all over, that's what they do. They eat a bunch of food to recover their energy and things like that. And he says there's absolutely no drinking of water during the ceremony. It makes people sick if they have any water, any food, or anything while they're under the influence. And also tries to sort of maybe a slight fast, like maybe have a breakfast, but then fast for a few hours before ingesting the mushrooms. What do you think about that type of stuff?
Well, we definitely have like asked them to fast before the intake of the psilocybin, but we do have let them drink water, not excessive amounts, but we also ourselves drink water while we're on it. And so far, we never had any bad experiences with that. It's possible that if you drink too much water, that this was happening, but just a little bit of water has so far in our experience never been a problem.
It's been
and
fine,
even, and also after if like in the first few hours we ask people to be really go inside and be with themselves, so they naturally do not like want to eat in that moment because you're just with them.
So present.
Yeah, they're just present. And then but when they come out of it and they want a little snack, they can have a little snack. But that's not after a few hours have passed already. And then after the end, when we all come down and we have the sharing of what happened, then we'll eat together afterwards.
But through the experience, if somebody wanted to eat or drink, I think it's hugely important that those are critical needs. And a lot of our problems today as humans is that our needs are not being met, and our needs weren't met in our childhood. And those are primitive, basic needs. And if somebody has a need, it's really important that they're allowed to express it and that need can be met, in my opinion. And especially something around food. And it's taking something like psilocybin really brings us in touch with our needs and what those needs are. And if somebody's looking to eat, it's probably something to do with something around that, or it could even be related to issues around emotional eating or eating disorders or something like that. And I think it's important in those circumstances for those needs to be met and to be allowed and to be like received or even celebrated and not shamed or denied.
Right. And it could induce different things for different people, where some people might feel really low on energy and need some crackers or a piece of fruit or something like that. And so you'll just have some things available, small things.
Still will be food there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And at the end, it's always, well, like naturally, as Alice said, you're not even thinking about food. You're so in it, you know?
Yeah, generally, my experience with it is not until sort of the come down period where you start to get a little bit hungry and need some energy. Yeah. Okay, so I think one thing I like to ask people when talking about this stuff, and we can sort of end with it, is just what your opinions are on what is happening to someone when they're taking psilocybin. Like, what do you view it in a spiritual type of way, where some people talk about actual, like, you're going into a spirit world, you're interacting with spirits that are separate from yourself. Some people view it as it's just your subconscious, you're tapping into a higher, like a pool of consciousness that we're all connected to, or something like that, or a higher dimension. What are your personal thoughts on what is happening to people when they're ingesting these substances?
Can I answer the third?
Well, different. I think what it's ultimately doing is to say that it's putting you only in touch with your subconscious, or only in touch with collective consciousness. Is that in itself is suggesting separation. And what I believe it's putting us in touch with is our own consciousness, which ultimately is the collective consciousness. There is no separation in that.
So you believe in? Do you sort of subscribe to the non-dual sort of frame of mind, where often it's people who are very into the 5-MeO DMT who talk about this, but it's something experienced by a lot of people, I think, who take psychedelics. It's just this idea that we're all one, right? We're all connected. We're all one mind. we're, and some people, go very far. They get, it's not only we're all one, but we're all God. We're all, everything around us is also us. It gets, you go extreme.
We're both individual and we're one.
Right. Yeah.
So
Which
so
is,
in this dimension, there's separation and there's individuality, and that we are all separate beings. There's no denying. I'm me, I'm Kerrie, I have an identity, this is Alice, we are separate, we've got separate bodies. From a higher perspective, she's just another aspect of me that fragmented at some stage of consciousness. And so is everything else. But both of those are truths.
Right. It seems like they couldn't be. It seems like they would be conflicting. But when you go down this path, I think those are some of the conclusions you come to, and it's very hard to wrap your head around some of those things because they don't exactly make perfect sense.
Well, they don't all make sense when you're looking at it through this stream of consciousness, which is developed in a 3D reality where we only look at things from one perspective. But everything has a duality. So
you can also look at it like we talked about different parts in ourselves, different aspects that want different things in ourselves. And you could also say, well, that's not possible because they're both me, but they still want different things. They have an inner conflict going on, but they're both me.
And that's exactly what's going on with the entire collective. It's just we're like a subculture of that.
Right.
As individuals, we're a subculture of what's happening from a state of oneness, if you want. So if you look at this consciousness, so if you look at like God or source energy, if you want to call it God or source or the universe, higher self, and we have this notion that God is like separate from us and looking at us. But God is the source, which is a stream of consciousness, which at some point separated from itself to learn more about itself, and fragmented again and fragmented again and fragmented again and fragmented again, which is what we're doing as individuals. We're like a subculture of that. We're just a fragment within a fragment.
Right. So it's like you could look at it as like a process of becoming whole again. It seems to be what we're trying to do. We're trying to go back to source or our roots or find out who we are. And it seems like in that process, we find out we are way more than we thought we were.
I don't think it's about going back to that. It's just about understanding that
that's where we came from.
Can exist, and that we are individual, but we have connection to our wholeness also, but that we can have an individual expression within that wholeness. And that's nothing, so that we're constantly, so because we're all connected and because we are one, if we look at oneness, that means I can't do anything without it affecting you and everything else that's alive on the planet. Because we're all aspects of the other. And if I hurt myself, I'm hurting Alice, I'm hurting you, I'm hurting someone else in some way, I'm hurting nature. Or if I love myself, I'm loving her. It's like everything has a ripple effect.
Right.
But then I also have, I've completely lost my train of thought, but then I'm also an individual with individual desires, with individual needs, with an individual expression of who I am, with an individual with individual emotions, with an individual past. Like that's my individuality within that wholeness, and that's both
real too. That's there too.
That's real too. That's what we came here to experience. That's what this dimension is about.
Yeah, and I like often I feel that people think like oneness, like going back to oneness because it will be better than where we are right now.
Right.
But it's not better. If it was better, why would we have created this?
Right.
It's about the experiencing exactly where we are right now, and everything is right with that, and everything is great about that, just as much as everything is great about looking at it from a different perspective and from a higher perspective and seeing that it's actually all one. It's both valid and it's both.
It's just another way. It's just another way of knowing more about ourselves and about consciousness, and that's why consciousness split in the first place, was to have another experience and another perspective.
Right. It's an empowering idea to think that we do, like you said before, we have that amount of influence over all the people around us, anyone we're connected to, anyone we speak to, that what we present and what we do is actually going to affect everything around us. We are so connected to everyone and everything around us that actually gives us a lot of power. That actually, it's an empowering idea. But also, you don't want to, if you go, I think that's the danger of going too far down the psychedelic sort of road, is that you can maybe start using it as that escape we were talking about before, and that's like, this oneness thing is what it's all about. That's we have to chase that or get to that or go back to that, like I said.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's an escape, and that's losing touch with the reality that you're living, that we're here on this. Like, that's not where everyone's reality is, and that's then you lose touch with your life in a way.
You're not going to be connected to people if all you're doing is putting your head in the clouds all the time.
Yeah, and then also by making oneness better than the reality we're in right now, you're creating separation. So you're not actually in oneness.
Right.
And but what happens when people especially get in touch with their spirituality is they make everything about spirituality, which is denying the physical self. And neither is more important. It's neither is actually separate. Like, we can't separate them, and we want to put in, oh, this is our body, this is our spiritual self, this is our higher self. I've even said those words, our higher self and our lower self. I never say our lower self, but we do like to say our higher self. And it's just creating separation even in our own being. And it's not, I've forgotten what I'm talking about again. I must be getting tired. It's quarter to at night. but to focus in and hone in on the idea of oneness being this bliss that we have to chase is denying and rejecting where we are here, which is magical too, and which deserves to be celebrated. And I think it's coming to terms with the appreciation for both of those truths existing within us.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good way to put it, a good thing to maybe wrap up on, end on. I think, it seems to be about this finding that balance between the yin and the yang, the whole duality, walking that between that line between order and chaos, and just like staying on the path. And that's what makes it fun or makes it exciting, is there's no just like one path to go on. You're constantly moving back and forth between different perspectives and different feelings, and different ideas, of what the world is. There's no one knows what this stuff is. That's why it's fun to talk about what these psychedelics do and what they are, because we don't really know yet.
We'd be so bored if we did. We'd be so bored if we had all the answers.
Yeah, it wouldn't be as fun.
What would we do?
Well, thanks a lot for speaking to me. I really enjoyed the chat. It was good to meet you guys.
Me too. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Great.
Maybe if you want to just let people know how they could get in touch with you, and if they're interested in maybe this retreat or one in the future, how could they get a hold of you?
You can just go to our website, awholenewhigh.com, and it will find all the information. There's a section called Trip With Us, and that's where we'll host our ceremonies.
Yeah, we'll have obviously our Facebook and Instagram are on there too. And we haven't released the information yet for the next retreat, which is going to be in September, October time. Okay. That will all be on the website and available, and on our Facebook page too.
Cool. And I'll link to the website too. If wherever you're checking this podcast out, it'll be in the description. So yeah.
Cool.
Right on. Thanks again.
Nice. Nice to hang out with you for a while. Thanks for having us.